Welcome, welcome everyone to this week's edition of the Wonder Series. I love doing these conversations, having these conversations every Wednesday, because our goal is to truly help you to look at your life from a different perspective. Ask the questions that you've been thinking about but are afraid to ask or didn't think to ask. And so truly, when you open your mind to other ideas, other concepts, it's amazing how many new things come into your life. And today we have a very special guest. I'm really excited to speak to our guest today. Our guest is Celeste Rose with the Sensual Leadership Academy. Ooh, this is going to be a juicy conversation, everyone. I love her title. She is a body confidence and sexual empowerment coach. Now, this is something that all of us ladies, and some of you guys too, really need to think about because, this is such a big part of our life, and we will touch on that in a little bit. So who is Celeste Rose? After spending a majority of her career in sales and leadership in corporate coaching, Celeste left corporate America to start her own coaching business. Yay! She is now, like I said, the body confidence and sexual empowerment coach, and is currently finishing her studies at the Tantric Institute of Integrated Sexuality. Ooh, we're going to have to talk about that too. That sounds awesome. So what does she do? Sounds interesting. We're all intrigued, right? What is it that Celeste does? She helps women love their bodies and reclaim their sexuality as a source of power so they can feel confident in their lives, relationships, and in their businesses. Celeste, welcome to the Wonder Series.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I am really excited for this conversation. So, okay, you were in sales and leadership in corporate America, doing some coaching there. And I have an idea what type of coaching you were doing there. How did that turn into body confidence and sexual empowerment coaching? So can you connect the dots for us, please?
Yes. So like I said, I was in corporate America for a majority of my career, and I was in a sales environment, working with mainly men. And what I experienced in this like highly male dominated environment was it was really challenging as a woman to be heard, to be seen, to be respected. And I was kind of trying to balance this line of like being myself, but not being perceived as a sexual being, because I kind of had this idea that that wasn't safe or it wasn't appropriate. And so what I found myself doing was unconsciously hiding myself in an effort to be respected. And it just really caused a lot of problems with my relationship with my body, with unwanted weight, because our unconscious wants to protect us in any way that we can. So I struggled with excess weight. I struggled with feeling confident in how I looked. And in that type of environment, when you are around people and you're doing presentations or you're leading a team, it's really important to feel confident in your body and how you present yourself. So when I ended up leaving corporate America, I wanted to coach women, and I wanted to coach women on feeling worthy in their business. And then I realized I didn't feel worthy. I had all of these issues with negative body image and low self-worth and low self-esteem. So I decided to pursue my certifications in body confidence coaching. And, to really I feel like we go towards the things that we need the most help in. And those are the things that we want to help other people with. So I pursued the certification in body confidence coaching. And then the next step of that was the sex, love, and relationship coaching. Yeah.
Really interesting because, it's none of this is stuff that we talk about, especially when we're young. So question for you, when you were younger, before you were in corporate America, did you feel the same way? Did you feel that unworthiness? Did you feel like you needed to kind of hide yourself? Or was that something that really started to manifest then?
Yeah. And it's interesting that you asked, because I don't think I was really aware of these issues. I have a background and I experienced childhood sexual abuse. And so some of these things were like very repressed and, repressed areas of my psyche that I hadn't really explored yet. And so what ended up happening is when I got into this environment where I was working with so many men, this trauma was slowly working its way to the surface. And my nervous system and my body was trying to like protect from that. And so I don't think when I was younger, I wasn't really aware of it. And then as I got into an environment where those things were being triggered, that's when it really came to the surface and was something that became a sore spot for me. And so, yeah, that's really how that kind of manifested in my life later in life, probably in my early 30s is when that happened.
It's always interesting to see, we don't really think of, our psyche and things that happen to us when we're young. If they're not consciously on our minds or physically in our face, so to speak, it's kind of one of those things that most of us don't even know it's there. But I'm in talking to so many women through the years, everyone has something that manifests, that pops up at some point in life.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because I think a lot of people think that, oh, if I have this issue or this insecurity, I wonder if it's trauma related. And not everybody has trauma. Sometimes it's just growing up in society and a culture that shames women's bodies and shames women's sexuality. So it could be religious conditioning, it could be cultural conditioning, it could be societal. But as women or humans in female bodies, we've learned somehow that our bodies are wrong, our sexuality is shameful, that we have to hide ourselves. And this manifests in a lot of negative ways illnesses within the body, disconnection from the body, disassociation. There can be all sorts of manifestations of that physical and mental health issues as well.
Absolutely. And you said for you, it was retaining weight. That's a way that our bodies protect us. And it's not necessarily about stop eating. I think that's where when people talk to me, because my focus is eat real food and my goal is to help people to live a healthy, happy lifestyle that works for them. So it's different for all of us, and at some point in life, you realize you've been through a lot. And so it's really interesting to kind of get to this stage in life where we can say, okay, yeah, I remember those things. I know what I was taught, I know what I learned in school and whatever, but now this is my time. And I think that's what is so important about what you do and about this conversation today. I have a question because we're talking about sexuality. What is the difference? And I think I'm pretty clear on what the difference is, but I could be totally wrong. What is the difference then between sex and sexuality? Obviously, they go together.
Yeah, so I think that sex is the physical act of sex, either solo or with a partner. And sexuality is an aspect of who we are as human beings. I believe our sexuality incorporates our arousal, our desire, how our body responds in certain situations, and also the sexual energy or the life force energy that we can tap into. Whereas sex would be more the act. Yeah, if that makes sense.
It does. And, again, they go together. But I think it's really important for people to know, because I was just reading something this morning, and it talked about, sexuality and pleasure. And I kind of looked, I was kind of reading the book thinking, okay, they go together, but they're still separate. They still have their own pieces in life. So sexuality obviously is human nature. So let's talk a little bit about that. It is so ingrained in who we are and as humans. So let's dig a little deeper if we can.
Yeah. So if you think about, you can be a sexual being tapped into your sexuality, your sexual energy, your sexual nature. It's kind of that connection to the primal that we are as human beings, where you can be a sexual being and not have sex. that not having sex doesn't make you not a sexual being. So I think that it's really important to recognize that we are all at our essence sexual beings. At one point or another, we may have been shamed or taught or told that that was wrong. So there are many people that have that repressed and feel a lot of shame or disconnection around it. But really, it is such a powerful part of who we are, of our energy, of how we show up in the world. And really, when I talk to business owners and I talk to women in business, their confidence, it's like this magnetism when they're tapped into their sexuality, their sensuality, their bodies and the sensation in their body. They're more magnetic. They attract what they desire. And so you can think of it as, viewing someone that's very connected and grounded in their body and their sensations, and then someone who's very disconnected, insecure. You can tell the difference between that. There's an energy with people that you will notice that are tapped in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So for those of us who are kind of going, who are listening, who are saying, okay, well, I don't know if I'm connected. I mean, I think in a way, if you're really connected,
Mm-hmm.
But I think in our society, a lot of us may not be connected. And how do we reconnect? How do we get to that place where we're confident in who we are? We may be confident in our abilities because of our schooling, our education, whatever it might be, but that's kind of where it ends. This is an additional piece that I think many, many women are missing.
Yeah. So you're asking how we can reconnect with, if we feel disconnected or we're not really sure if we're connected to our sexuality, how we can reconnect with that. And the first thing that when I coach women is to help them reconnect with the sensations in their body, not just sexual sensations, but any sensation of pleasure. It could be through the senses, through taste, through touch, through smell, through sight, anything that brings our bodies physical pleasure. And I think sometimes pleasure is associated, or like the connotation is that it's only sexual, but there can be so much pleasure experienced in any area of the body. So really tapping into that. And I also think that, it's paying attention to what you're feeling and what the sensations are helps you connect with what is happening in your body. So focusing on the sensation brings your awareness to what is happening in the body. So many people, when they are in sexual situations or experiences, disassociate by thinking about their to-do list or the thing that they have to do tomorrow or something that already happened, or worried about what does my body look like or what sounds am I making. And so because we're so stuck in our head most of the time, we're completely unaware or disassociated from what is actually happening in our body. So the first thing that I do with women is to help them bring their awareness into the body. And one of the tools we use is our breath. So certain types of breath work can actually release or kind of release that cortical control, the control that the mind has, and releases that so that you can get into and in touch with the sensations.
I think it's really interesting that you talk about the senses, because I know with what I've done in the past with my clients, again, with food, is, the sense of taste, the texture, the smell, all of those things are essential to the pleasure, the enjoyment of eating. So I always kind of correlate things to food because that's my background. And so like that pleasure, that enjoyment that people get by being mindful, just stepping back and being mindful, whether it's food, but now specifically when it comes to their sexuality and how they're feeling. I think often we think of the feeling is just, during the act and when it's happening. But what you're saying is there's so, to really pay attention to the other things that are going on in your body.
Yeah. And I love how you brought in the food, because yes, like food eating certain foods is very pleasurable, and it releases certain hormones or chemicals in the brain when we eat certain foods, specifically sugary foods.
Mhm.
And so what we tend to do, I find, as human beings, is because sexual pleasure has been shamed or wrong or bad in the past, we tend to seek out pleasure. And one of the easiest, most convenient ways to do so is through food.
So
And
true.
so what I find is that there are many women, either and men as well, if they have a history of trauma, if there is shame, any sort of conditioning around their sexuality, or even self-pleasure, because they're not allowing that in their life, there's this aspect that is unsatisfied. And so in order to seek and fulfill that satisfaction, we use food.
Mhm.
And then the unhealthy aspect of that is the food that we seek out to release that certain chemical in the brain is often not good for our bodies in the long run.
Mhm. So we're seeking pleasure, but yet at the same time, it's those things that we're seeking that are actually ruining our body in ways, and maybe even, kind of dampening our feelings, whether it's, again, more sexuality, or even with food. When you have so much sugar, you almost don't taste it anymore.
Right, right. And it's interesting, the chemicals that are released in the brain when you eat chocolate are the same chemicals that are released in the brain when you have an orgasm. So dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and leptin, the satiation hormone, are released when you experience pleasure in your body, whether it's through sex or through sensuality, or food. So when I work with women who struggle with emotional eating, or who struggle with unwanted food behaviors, we really assess, like, what is their relationship with pleasure, and reframing the relationship with pleasure so that they can seek it in other ways and truly feel satisfied, so that they're not using food as a coping mechanism.
Mhm. I love the way you explain that, because, like I said, I was reading in a book this morning, and I wasn't really connecting. I was connecting pleasure specifically to sex. And I really thought to myself, well, what do I get pleasure from? And instantly, of course, I thought of a really good bottle of wine, like a really good meal. So for me, it was kind of like pleasure equals food, and that was kind of an eye opener. A simple question, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who has that same situation.
And it's interesting too how our certain senses are kind of hardwired after repeated behavior over a course of time. So with women, many women do struggle with emotional eating or unwanted food behaviors, and their experience of pleasure is hardwired with food. So it's really about deconstructing that and rewiring the brain and the nervous system to find pleasure in other places. By connecting with the other senses, and by bringing in all of the senses and experiencing pleasure in the body, can be really powerful, and actually can help the nervous system to unwind and to release the limiting thoughts and conditions that we're holding on to that keep us stuck in some of those negative behaviors.
How does one listening say, okay, maybe maybe I'm listening to this because I need some support? Where does somebody start? Maybe they're not quite ready to pick up the phone and call you. Maybe they are. How do they start? What's the first step in kind of rediscovering your sexuality and who you are and what you actually want from your life in this respect?
Yeah, so I think one of the first steps is kind of acknowledging if there's a gap, right? I think that a lot of us are going through our lives. We're very focused on our careers. We're very focused on, what we're creating in the world's financial aspect of things, and just the state of the world in general. But I think that if someone's looking at their lives and looking at their relationships, and they feel unsatisfied sexually, or they might not feel unsatisfied, but they notice that it's an area of their life or relationship that causes them pain or disconnection. I speak with a lot of women who don't want to have sex. They don't desire it at all, and their partners do, and they feel a large amount of guilt because they don't. And so that's an aspect as well. If you're not feeling that desire and you wish that you did. So one of the things, there's some books that people could read if they want to start to explore. And Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski is a really good book that talks about arousal, desire, how our brain works, how it accelerates arousal and desire, or how it shuts it off. And so that's a really good place to start to learn more about what's going on inside of you when you have these experiences. And then also Women's Anatomy of Arousal by Sherry Winston. That is a really good book because a lot of women don't even know like what brings them pleasure. They don't know how to ask for what they want. They don't know how to tell their partner what feels good. And so sometimes there's this like, oh, I don't want to hurt his ego, or I don't want to make him feel bad. But in my experience and with the men that I've worked with, men really want their partners to experience pleasure. They really want to know. And so having those conversations, and just even opening the conversation up, not in the bedroom, but maybe outside of the bedroom,
Before.
Like, having a conversation ahead of time, I'm exploring this and I really want us to have a healthy, happy sex life. I really think that this is an area of our life that if we focus on this, we will experience more intimacy, deeper love, deeper connection. Also, people that have healthy sex lives, they're less stressed because, again, all the chemicals that are released into your system when you experience pleasure. So with how the world right now, I really think that this is a very inexpensive way that people can de-stress. So yeah, like just explore, read some books, and then really just notice what's coming up for you. If you have a history of trauma, if you grew up in a very strict religious household or strict religious environment, there might be some trauma healing and some work that needs to be done with the nervous system that you may need to seek a professional. But if just in general, you're wanting to learn more and you're wanting to implement some of these things, these books are a really good place to start.
I think that's fabulous. I love the titles too. They're great.
Yeah.
For the women that just don't feel it, they're just not interested. Is it more something, is it between their ears or is it a physical thing?
There can be some physical things that can get in the way of arousal. I find it's mostly in our head. It's mostly that we've been told that women's pleasure is not important. We've been told that sex is something you do for them. It's not for you. We've been told that orgasm is not important. It's really these beliefs that we've taken on from our upbringing, from watching the other women in our lives, and also from the media and movies and TV shows and how women's sexuality is portrayed. It's often portrayed, if you are a sexual being, you get slut shamed, or you are like, you're not popular in a way that you want to be popular. And so I find that there's many women who were exploring their sexuality in high school and they got shamed because of it. And so because of this experience of shame and the nervous system and, the parts of our brain that want to protect us from feeling shame again, we disconnect from the things that, from our turn-ons. And also there are some aspects of turn-on that feel wrong or taboo for some people. And so I think too, just recognizing that anything that turns you on or trips your trigger, it's not wrong. It just means that a part of you is perceiving it as sexually relevant. And that's one of the things that Emily talks about in her book, Come As You Are, is there's no need to be ashamed of what turns you on. It's just that your brain is recognizing it as relevant sexually, and your body can respond to that.
Sure. And I would imagine a lot of women don't even know what does turn them on and excite them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we have kind of gone through this, this is what you do and why you do it. And, it's the same all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really lucky that I don't have to deal with the same all the time.
Right.
I just think it's one of the things that I think is so important. Again, the goal of living healthy list is healthy, happy, vibrant lives where we are flourishing. And I think the important thing that you're bringing up here is it's individual. We're all sexual beings, but it's individual to each of us, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love it. It's really exciting. I think those two books, I'm going to make sure that we have all the information in the show notes, because I think a lot of times people will listen and say, yeah, I get that. Mm-hmm, yep. And want to do more. If they don't start connecting right away, they lose it. And next week they'll be going, oh, they're back in the same swing of things. So earlier we talked a little bit about, you mentioned, kind of the mindset piece of all of this. So let's talk a little bit more about mindset in all of this. Obviously there's, potentially trauma from when we're young, shaming, all of these things. How does one change their mindset on that, or bring a more positive mindset and start to push the negative thoughts away?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because if we look at sexual desire as wrong or bad or something that's not for us, we can be very disconnected from it. And so I think to change the mindset, asking questions like, how does this belief impact how I feel about my body? How does this belief impact my relationship? And is this belief supporting the life that I want to live, my magnetism, my vitality? And if the belief is not supporting, we get to choose whether or not we continue to believe it. Now, changing the belief is not as easy, right? There's processes, there's embodiment practices, there's all sorts of things that we can do to rewire that belief. But I think it really depends on, do you want to believe something different? And if you want to believe something different, then you can start working with that belief to select something that feels more empowering. What if instead of my sexuality is bad or wrong or something that is shameful, it can be my sexuality is my connection to my body and my connection to my life force energy. And by being connected to my sexuality, I'm connected to my creativity and what it is that I'm bringing into the world. So we get to choose those beliefs. We can continue to believe the beliefs that were imprinted on us from our childhood and our upbringing, or we can choose something that supports us now. And so working with creating a new belief, and then working with the nervous system and rewiring the rest of us to get in alignment and on board with that new belief. That's the work.
It's really exciting, because we have one life to live. At least that's what we think. That's what we know. At this stage in the world, we have one life to live. And it should be exciting. It should be thrilling. It should be fulfilling. And often, we talk about a fulfilling life in that. And I think when most people talk about that, they're talking more about, I have lots in my life. I have people in my life. I have things that I do. I have, I play golf, or I have a business. But this is fulfillment in a very bigger scale, a very more personal scale.
Yeah, well, if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the very basic level is food, water, shelter, sex. And it's not just for the purpose of procreation, it's for the purpose of your body working optimally and efficiently. And we need the chemicals produced in the experience of pleasure in order to achieve those higher levels of love and self-actualization. So if you get to a certain point in your life where you've achieved a certain amount of things, and maybe you've achieved success, and maybe you are financially stable and things are really going well, but it feels like there's something missing, that could be something that you look into. And part of what I work with is Tantric Sexuality, which is sexuality as a path of awakening to the truth of who we are as spiritual beings living a human experience. And so this has been a really powerful thing for me because of my past being, very religious, and this idea that I have to choose between my sexuality and my spirituality. I kind of like disconnected from both. And this tantric path has brought together and intersected sexuality and spirituality as a methodology, or as a pathway that I can actually self-actualize while experiencing pleasure and connection with myself and my partner, which is like mind blowing.
Yeah, you're kind of blowing my mind over here. I was like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Well, that's totally cool. I'm almost at a loss for words. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. I'm almost mesmerized here.
Yeah.
So there is so much that we can learn.
So much. Yeah.
And I love that this conversation has been really interesting and really eye-opening. For me, I always think, I'm kind of, I'm pretty good. I got things going on. And like I said this morning, just reading that one thing this morning kind of triggered me. And interestingly, that you and I were having this conversation today. And I realized now that there's so much more to our sexuality, our individuality. Really kind of, they go together. They're not separate. So I guess my last couple of questions, the last few minutes here, I would like you to tell everyone how they can find you, how you work with your clients, how they can find you, and anything else that you'd like to share.
Sure. So you can find me. My website is sensualleadershipacademy.com. And I'm currently offering a 12-week program called Unlock Your Potential. And it's really helping you tap into your sexuality as a source of transformation and manifestation in your life and relationship and business. All areas of your life are impacted by this. And so if this is something that people are curious about, or they're like, yes, I want to tap into my sexuality to revolutionize my life, that would be a really great program. And if you want to just kind of like learn a little bit more in, little bite-sized chunks, you can follow me on Instagram, sensual_leadership_academy. And just connect with me in whatever way feels good.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really excited for everyone to connect with you. Guys, if you're on Instagram, go follow Celeste there, check it out. And truly, if you're wondering if this is something that you may want to explore, go to the website, talk with Celeste, get on her schedule and have a call, because the best way forward is to start the conversation.
Yes. And I did want to mention that I do have a practice that I will be sharing with you that people can tap into. And it is a self-pleasure practice in which we are using pleasure and the power of our intention to manifest our desires. And so this practice is what really motivated me to go on this path in the first place. And so that'll be available for free for all of our listeners. So,
okay, where do we find that? On the website?
Yes, I will have an opt-in on the website. And I'm so excited for people to experience this, because it's really an amazing way to harness your energy and to really use it to transform your life.
Absolutely fabulous. Please make sure I get that link so we can add it to our show notes, so everyone can just go there quickly and get onto your list and get this amazing practice. So Celeste, thank you so much for your insight, your inspiration, and just truly, it's been a pleasure to speak with you today. And I look forward to future conversations as well.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So thank you everyone for listening. You have been here with the Wonder Series. We are here every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time to help you wonder what life would be like if you looked at it from a different perspective and accepted different ideas, and certainly to give you tips and strategies to live that healthy, happy, fulfilling life that you deserve. Have a great week, everyone. We'll see you next time.